My name is Melissa Harper, and I just turned 32. I should have been happy blowing out the candles on my birthday cake at the upscale restaurant I was paying for. Instead, my mother leaned in close, her perfume suffocating me as she whispered, "You're jealous of your brother." Something inside me finally snapped after years of financial support, countless sacrifices, and endless excuses. "Then let him pay his own bills," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Little did they know I was about to shut down every utility, card, and rent payment I'd been covering for years. If you've ever had family take advantage of your generosity, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button while I tell you how I finally stood up for myself after years of being the family ATM. Growing up in Chicago with my younger brother Ryan was mostly happy. We were 5 years apart, me at 32 now, him at 27, but as kids, that age gap didn't matter much. Our middle-class neighborhood was filled with tree-lined streets and modest homes where we'd ride bikes until streetlights came on. Mom and Dad both worked, making ends meet without much extra. From early on, our differences were apparent. School came naturally to me, straight as without much effort, always with my nose in a book. Ryan was different, struggling with academics but compensating with charm that won over teachers and classmates alike. He could talk his way into or out of anything, flashing that winning smile while I calculated compound interest for fun in math class. Despite our differences, we were close. I'd help him with homework. He'd scare away boys who teased me about being too smart. We shared secrets under blanket forts, swore blood oaths with safety pins, much to Mom's horror when she found out, and defended each other fiercely against neighborhood bullies. Everything changed when I was 14 and Ryan was 9. The fighting between our parents had been escalating for months, hushed arguments after we went to bed, sudden silences when we entered rooms. Then came the day Dad packed his suitcases, promised he'd see us soon, and drove away. Mom cried for weeks. That's when I started working. First babysitting on weekends, then shelving books at the local library after school. By 16, I was working 20 hours weekly at a coffee shop while maintaining my GPA. The money wasn't much, but it helped Mom with groceries and meant I could buy my own school supplies. Ryan continued being Ryan, lovable, carefree, assuming things would work out. When Northwestern University offered me a full academic scholarship for finance, it felt like validation for all those nights studying while friends were at parties. The campus was only a train ride from home, so I commuted to save on housing costs. Between classes, I interned at Bridgewater Financial, making coffee runs and organizing spreadsheets. By graduation, they offered me a junior analyst position. 5 years of 60-hour workweeks, skipped vacations, and relentless networking paid off when I made senior financial advisor. My clients trusted me with their futures, and I never took that responsibility lightly. My small apartment became my sanctuary, nothing fancy, but it was mine, purchased with my savings and careful planning. The first time I helped Ryan financially seemed so innocent. He called during his sophomore year at Illinois State, panic in his voice because Mom couldn't afford his textbooks that semester. $800 later, I felt good about helping, proud even. He was so grateful, promising to pay me back once he graduated and landed a killer job in marketing. Those small loans and gifts became a pattern. Birthday presents more expensive than I bought for myself. Car repairs when his ancient Honda broke down again. Security deposit for his first apartment after college. Each time, there were promises of repayment soon that never materialized. By 31, I'd been promoted to team leader at Bridgewater. My investment portfolio was growing steadily, though not as quickly as it should have been. Still, when planning my 32nd birthday, I wanted to celebrate properly. For the first time since Christmas, my entire family would be together. Mom, Ryan, a few close friends, and even my rarely seen uncle from Dad's side. Le Bistro was the restaurant I'd walked past for years, peeking at the menu and promising myself someday. Their chef had just earned a Michelin star, and reservations were nearly impossible to get. I booked 2 months in advance, put down a $500 deposit, and felt a thrill when confirming our table for 8. The week before, I spent hours shopping for the perfect outfit, eventually choosing a deep blue dress that made my eyes pop. I scheduled a salon appointment for highlights and a blowout, splurging on the full treatment. This birthday would be different, a celebration of all I'd accomplished, surrounded by people I loved. Ryan had called 3 times that week, each conversation filled with excitement about the amazing gift he had for me. "You're going to flip, sis," he promised. After years of forgotten presents or last-minute gift cards, his enthusiasm was contagious. Maybe he was finally growing up. Maybe this birthday would mark a new chapter for us both. 6 months before my birthday, Ryan lost his job at Vertex Media. The marketing firm had been restructuring, he explained over beers at my apartment. His position as junior content creator had been eliminated, but he wasn't worried. "The job market is hot right now," he assured me, scrolling through job listings. "I'll have something better in 2 weeks, tops." When his landlord threatened eviction after the second missed rent payment, I offered to help, just until you're back on your feet. The $1,800 monthly for his trendy downtown apartment wasn't nothing, but I could manage. "You're literally saving my life," he said, hugging me tight. "I'll pay you back with interest once I land somewhere." Weeks passed. Job applications were supposedly sent, interviews allegedly scheduled. Yet somehow Ryan's Instagram showed him at rooftop bars, music festivals, and weekend trips to Lake Michigan. When I gently asked about his job search over Sunday dinner at Mom's, she jumped in before he could answer. "The job market is brutal for his generation," she said, refilling his wine glass. "And Ryan needs to find something that appreciates his creative talents. He can't just take any position." My brother nodded solemnly while texting under the table. Ryan's girlfriend Amber complicated things further. Tall, stylish, and perpetually between modeling gigs, she had expensive tastes and no visible income. Yet somehow she sported new designer sunglasses each time I saw her, while Ryan complained about being broke. 3 months before my birthday, Ryan called at midnight, voice tight with panic. His car had been repossessed. "I meant to make the payments," he swore, "but things have been so tight with rent and everything." Without reliable transportation, how could he possibly get to interviews? The bus system was sketchy in his neighborhood, and Uber would cost a fortune long-term. 2 days later, I co-signed for a certified pre-owned Audi at 9% interest. Nothing fancy, Ryan insisted, though it was nicer than my 5-year-old Toyota. "Just reliable transportation so I can get back on my feet." The salesman smirked when I wrote the check for the down payment. It was around this time I realized Ryan had been using my Netflix, Spotify, and phone plan for years. The discoveries came gradually, noticing strange shows in my continue watching queue, playlists I hadn't created, data usage spikes I couldn't explain. When confronted, he seemed genuinely confused by my concern. "We're family," he shrugged. I thought that stuff was just understood. Then came his sheepish admission that he'd also been having trouble with utility payments. Would I mind adding his electric, gas, and internet to my autopay accounts? Just until things turn around, he promised for the dozenth time. The week of my birthday, Ryan texted asking to borrow $200 for something special he wanted to get me. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I transferred the money anyway. What was another $200 at this point? At work, my colleague Jessica noticed I'd started bringing lunch instead of joining the team's weekly outings to the sushi place downstairs. "Budget cuts at home," she joked, not knowing how close to the truth she was. I laughed it off, blaming a new fitness plan rather than admitting I was watching every dollar. My friend Taylor was less easily fooled. Over coffee the weekend before my birthday, she commented on the dark circles under my eyes. "You look stressed, Mel. Is everything okay with work?" When I hesitated, she narrowed her eyes. "Is it Ryan again? What's he done now?" I changed the subject, unwilling to admit I'd checked my credit score for the first time in months and found it had dropped 40 points. The credit card balance I'd always paid in full was now revolving, interest accumulating while I covered my brother's expenses. The morning of my birthday, Ryan called asking if he could bring Amber to the dinner I was paying for. She's practically family, he argued when I hesitated. And she's been looking forward to trying Le Bistro. I reluctantly agreed, mentally recalculating the per-person cost of the meal I'd been saving for. An hour later, Mom called. "Just checking that you ordered chocolate ganache for the cake," she said. "You know it's Ryan's favorite." When I reminded her that I preferred vanilla bean, there was a pause. "Well, but chocolate would make everyone happy, don't you think?" I changed the order while still on the phone, the bakery charging an additional $50 for the last-minute switch. As I prepared for my birthday celebration, memories of previous birthdays surfaced unbidden. Ryan's 21st at an exclusive club downtown, where I covered the $2,000 table minimum. His 25th at a beach resort weekend I organized and funded. Each year, despite not being the birthday person, my brother somehow received gifts more expensive than anything I got. "Ryan's just starting out," Mom would say, presenting him with the latest gaming console or designer watch. "You're so successful, you don't need anything special." My presents were typically practical, kitchen gadgets or business books, while Ryan received items from my own wish list that I couldn't justify buying myself. My apartment told the real story of my finances. Stylish but modest, with furniture I'd collected gradually over years. The dining table came from a thrift store, refinished during a weekend project. My sofa was high quality, but purchased floor sample at 40% off. I lived comfortably but carefully, maintaining the spreadsheet on my laptop that tracked every expense. That spreadsheet had a separate tab labeled Ryan, a habit from my accounting days that now revealed an uncomfortable truth. Over the past 2 years alone, I'd spent $42,000 on my brother. Rent, car payments, random cash transfers, his portion of family gifts for Mom, utility bills, grocery deliveries when he was between paychecks. The total made my stomach clench. My credit card statement showed a $5,000 balance carried over 3 months, the first time in my adult life I hadn't paid in full. The minimum payments were manageable, but the interest felt like throwing money away, something I lectured clients against daily. I arrived at Le Bistro 30 minutes early, wanting everything to be perfect. The staff led me to our private dining area with exposed brick walls and twinkling string lights. The table settings were elegant without being pretentious, exactly what I'd hoped for when booking. Mom arrived 15 minutes late, air-kissing my cheek before settling into her chair. I couldn't help noticing her new purse, a soft leather Prada in burgundy that I recognized immediately. It had been open in my browser for weeks, part of my someday wish list. When I complimented it, she beamed. "Ryan helped me pick it out. He has such good taste." Ryan and Amber arrived 45 minutes after the reservation time, no apologies offered. My brother hugged me quickly before launching into a story about their quick shopping trip that had apparently caused their tardiness. Amber interrupted to show off her new ankle boots, the red soles flashing as she extended her leg. "We're so broke it's not even funny," she lamented, while wearing an outfit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But these were 60% off, so practically a steal. Ryan nodded enthusiastically, his arm around her waist. When drink orders came, my brother patted his pockets theatrically before looking at me with familiar sheepishness. "I think I forgot my wallet at home. Can you spot me? I'll Venmo you." The Venmo that never came after dozens of similar promises. Throughout appetizers, I couldn't help noticing Ryan's wrist. The watch looked new, stainless steel with a distinctive blue face that I knew started at 4 figures. When I asked about it, he quickly changed the subject, pulling his sleeve down. Mom lavished attention on every story Ryan told, laughing too loudly at his jokes while interrupting me mid-sentence when I tried to share news about my recent promotion. "That's nice, honey," she'd say before turning back to my brother. "Ryan, tell everyone about that client you almost landed before the layoffs." When someone suggested a family photo, Mom immediately positioned Ryan in the center, physically moving me to the edge of the frame with a firm hand on my shoulder. "The lighting's better over here," she explained when I resisted. The scene triggered a childhood memory, so vivid it made my chest tight. Christmas morning when I was 12, opening the small earrings I'd asked for while Ryan unwrapped the expensive gaming console no one could afford. What Mom didn't know was that my babysitting savings had mysteriously disappeared from my drawer that week, exactly the amount needed to cover the difference for Ryan's gift. I never mentioned it, seeing how happy he was. As main courses arrived, my headache intensified. Ryan was showing Amber something on his phone, both of them laughing. "The Airbnb for next weekend," he explained when he caught me looking. "Little getaway to Michigan wine country." "You deserve a vacation after all your stress," Mom said, patting his hand. Job hunting is exhausting. Neither mentioned the thousands of dollars in rent I was covering while they planned wine tastings. Ryan's landlord came up in conversation when my friend asked about his apartment. "That jerk is being impossible about the late rent again," Ryan complained, rolling his eyes. "Threatening eviction over a couple of weeks. Some people have no compassion." I took a large sip of wine, avoiding Taylor's knowing glance from across the table. The couple of weeks was actually 3 months of rent payments sitting in my bank's pending transactions, scheduled to process at midnight. The birthday cake's arrival should have been a highlight of the evening. 3 tiers of chocolate ganache with gold-dusted decorations, exactly as Mom had insisted upon. Le Bistro's pastry chef had outdone herself, creating something worthy of a magazine cover rather than my modest celebration. As servers placed the masterpiece at the center of the table, a moment of hope flickered inside me. Everyone gathered around, faces illuminated by the soft glow of approaching candles. Perhaps this moment would salvage the evening, a chance to feel special on my birthday after all. Ryan leaned toward Amber, whispering something that made her giggle and nod enthusiastically. I caught fragments about the lake house and jet skis for sure, clearly elaborating on their weekend plans. My brother's hand casually rested on her thigh, his new watch catching the candlelight. "Ryan deserves a nice vacation," Mom commented, apparently overhearing. "After all the stress he's been under with the job situation. Sometimes you need to spend a little to recharge." She said this while I calculated how many extra hours I'd need to work to cover next month's additional expenses. The restaurant staff gathered around our table, candles fully lit, ready for the traditional birthday song. Friends and family joined voices in a melody that should have brought joy, but instead felt hollow. As the song ended and I leaned forward to make a wish, Mom's voice came soft but clear beside my ear. "You're jealous of your brother," she whispered, her smile never faltering for the benefit of onlookers. "You always have been." In that moment, every sacrifice I'd ever made flashed before me in perfect clarity. Working through high school while Ryan enjoyed extracurriculars. Commuting to college to save money while he lived in dorms. Taking overnight shifts at the financial firm to prove my dedication while he partied through his early 20s. The vacations never taken, investments postponed, dreams deferred, all to be the responsible one, the supportive one, the one who could always be counted on when bills came due. Something crystallized inside me, a sudden, absolute certainty that nothing would ever be enough. No amount of money, support, or sacrifice would change the dynamic that had defined our family for decades. Ryan would always be the golden child, and I would always be expected to ensure his comfort at my own expense. "Then let him pay his own bills," I replied, my voice soft but perfectly steady. Mom blinked, confusion crossing her face as the implication of my words registered. Ryan looked up from his conversation with Amber, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. "Excuse me," Mom said, her smile strained. I set down my napkin carefully beside my plate. I said, let Ryan pay his own bills. All of them. Starting tonight. Mel, what are you talking about? Ryan laughed nervously, glancing around the table where conversations had begun to falter. Your rent, Ryan. $1,800 monthly for the past 6 months. Your car payment, $720. Your phone bill on my family plan, your Netflix, Hulu, Spotify Premium. The utilities you couldn't manage, electric, gas, internet. The credit card I added you to as an authorized user. The loans that were never repaid. My voice remained calm, each word precise despite the emotion churning beneath. I'm shutting down every payment, starting tonight. Amber's jaw dropped, her eyes darting between Ryan and me. You pay all his bills? She asked, genuine shock in her voice. All of them. She's exaggerating, Ryan said quickly, his charm switching on like a light. Mel helped out temporarily while I'm between jobs. It's not a big deal, right, sis? $42,000 in the past 2 years, I replied, the spreadsheet figures burned into my memory. That's not temporary, and it's not helping out. It's enabling dependency. Melissa and Harper, Mom hissed, her public facade cracking. This is completely inappropriate. You're making a scene on your birthday of all days. Yes, it is my birthday, I agreed, standing slowly. And for once, I'm giving myself a gift that matters. Financial independence. For all of us. You don't mean this, Mom said, reaching for my hand. You're upset about something, but we can discuss it privately. Not here, not like this. I absolutely mean it, I said, pulling my hand away. I've covered every expense, made every sacrifice, and received nothing but expectations for more. I'm done. Ryan's face had lost its easy confidence, panic rising in his eyes as the reality of my words sank in. But the rent is due next week, he stammered. And the car payment. You can't just. I can and I am, I interrupted. You're 27 years old, Ryan. It's time to pay your own bills. The cake sat untouched between us, candles melting into the frosting. Wishes left unmade, celebrations abandoned. I reached for my purse, placed $300 bills on the table to cover dinner, and walked out of my own birthday party without looking back. Behind me, I heard Mom calling my name, Ryan's protests rising in volume, but I didn't turn around. The night air felt clean against my skin as I walked to my car, ignoring the buzzing phone in my purse. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected breaking through the anger and hurt, relief. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and talk radio, anything to drown out the competing voices in my head. Guilt wrestled with liberation, uncertainty with resolve. By the time I parked in my assigned spot, my hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a calm determination I barely recognized. Inside my apartment, I went straight to my laptop. The familiar glow of the screen illuminated my living room as I logged into my online banking portal. Ryan's financial entanglements with me were extensive, requiring methodical dismantling. First, the automatic rent payments to Highland Property Management. I navigated to recurring transfers, found the $1,800 monthly payment with Ryan Harper Rent in the memo line, and clicked Cancel Series. A warning popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Without hesitation, I clicked Yes. Next came the utilities. Electric, gas, internet. Each required separate logins to different provider portals. I systematically removed payment information and initiated service transfers back to the account holder. Please note that service may be interrupted if alternate payment arrangements are not made within 3 business days, one website cautioned. I took screenshots of each cancellation for documentation. The phone plan was trickier. Ryan had been on my family plan for 7 years, his data usage consistently maxing out our shared limits. I logged into the carrier website and removed him as an authorized user, initiating the process to transfer his number to a separate account. User will need to establish their own payment method within 5 days to maintain service, the confirmation read. The credit card company required a phone call despite the late hour. I need to remove an authorized user immediately and request a new card for the primary account holder, I explained to the representative named Marcus. He asked no questions, efficiently handling the request with a professionalism I appreciated. Email to Ryan's landlord. This letter serves as formal notification that effective immediately, I am terminating all financial responsibility for tenant Ryan Harper at 1420 Lakeview Apartments, Unit 307. Any existing automatic payments from my accounts should be considered unauthorized after today's date. By 2 a.m, I had systematically dismantled every financial connection to my brother. Each cancellation brought a strange mixture of anxiety and relief, like cutting away anchors I hadn't fully acknowledged were dragging me down. The final task was updating my budget spreadsheet, removing the Ryan categories entirely. The difference was immediately apparent. Suddenly, my monthly cash flow showed a surplus rather than deficit. I stared at the revised figures, a weight lifting from my shoulders that I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in years, waking to sunlight streaming through blinds I'd forgotten to close in my focused state the night before. My phone showed the aftermath: 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 16 email notifications. The communications followed a predictable pattern. Ryan's messages evolved from confusion, "What happened last night?" to anger, "You can't just cut me off without warning," to panic, "The landlord called about rent being canceled," to begging, "Please just cover this month while I figure things out." Mom's voicemails alternated between guilt trips, "How could you embarrass your brother like that?" and threats, "If you don't fix this immediately, don't expect to be welcome at family gatherings." Amber had taken their grievances public, her social media filled with vague posts about toxic family members and showing true colors. Several mutual acquaintances had messaged asking what happened, clearly having seen only one version of events. Surprisingly, a text from Connor, Ryan's college roommate, offered unexpected support. "Been waiting years for someone to finally make Ryan grow up. Tough love, but necessary. Stay strong, Melissa." After making coffee and taking a long shower, I made one final financial decision: changing the locks on my apartment. The spare key I'd given Ryan for emergencies only had mysteriously been used whenever I was working late, evidenced by missing food and occasionally borrowed clothes or electronics. The locksmith arrived by noon, efficiently replacing the deadbolt while making small talk about the unseasonably warm weather. $300 later, I had new keys and a reinforced sense of boundaries. Monday morning, I scheduled a meeting with my own financial advisor, a humbling experience for someone who advised others professionally. Barbara listened without judgment as I explained the situation, then helped map out a recovery plan for my depleted savings and unnecessary credit card debt. "You're in better shape than you think," she assured me, reviewing my revised budget. 6 months of disciplined spending, and you'll be back on track toward your long-term goals. That Friday night, I realized something startling while reviewing restaurant options online. I could afford dinner out again. Nothing extravagant, but the neighborhood bistro I'd loved before Ryan's financial crises began dominating my budget. The simple pleasure of ordering without mentally calculating how it would affect my ability to cover my brother's car payment felt revolutionary. The real test came Wednesday of the following week. I was in the middle of a client meeting when our receptionist interrupted with an urgent message. Ryan was in the lobby, demanding to see me immediately. According to Sophia at the front desk, he was becoming increasingly agitated, raising his voice about family emergencies and being abandoned. Excusing myself from the meeting, I found Ryan pacing the marble floors of our reception area, disheveled in a way I'd never seen him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his normally perfectly styled hair unwashed. "You need to fix this," he said immediately, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. They're going to shut off the electricity tomorrow, and the landlord has started eviction proceedings. This isn't funny anymore, Melissa. I'm at work, I replied calmly, conscious of the audience his outburst had attracted. This isn't the place for this conversation. Where's the place then? He demanded, voice rising further. You won't answer my calls, won't respond to texts. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to pay your own bills, I said, maintaining eye contact despite his increasing agitation. Like every other adult. With what money? He nearly shouted. You know I don't have a job. That's a problem you need to solve, I replied, signaling discreetly to our security guard who had noticed the disturbance. I can recommend some employment agencies if you'd like. The look of betrayal on his face was almost enough to break my resolve. Almost. Security approached, professionally asking Ryan to lower his voice or continue the conversation elsewhere. When he refused, they escorted him to the lobby elevators, his protests echoing until the doors closed. My colleagues were surprisingly supportive, several stopping by my office later to check if I was okay. Jessica brought coffee and admitted she'd been worried about me for months. You seemed stretched so thin, she said. Whatever that was about, you handled it with more grace than most would have. That weekend was the first in recent memory without a financial emergency from Ryan. No urgent calls about overdrawn accounts or unexpected expenses. The silence felt strange but liberating, like learning to breathe again after too long underwater. 1 week after my birthday dinner debacle, Mom hosted a family dinner at her house. I wasn't invited, but my cousin Sophia called afterward to fill me in. According to her, Ryan had dominated the evening with complaints about my sudden betrayal and abandonment when he needed me most. Mom had supported his version entirely, painting me as cruel and unreasonable. I just thought you should know what they're saying, Sophia said awkwardly. It doesn't sound like the cousin I know. It's not the full story, I acknowledged, grateful for her call. But I'm not going to defend myself to people who aren't interested in both sides. The following day, I made 2 important calls. The first was to a therapist recommended by Barbara, my financial advisor. Dr. Eliza Coleman specialized in family dynamics and boundary issues, terms I would have dismissed as psychobabble months earlier, but now recognized as exactly what I needed. Our first session was mostly intake information, but even explaining the situation aloud to an objective professional brought clarity. It sounds like you've been in a caretaking role far beyond what's reasonable between siblings, she observed. That creates patterns that are painful to break, but continuing them causes harm to everyone involved. My second call was to Taylor, who I'd been avoiding since the birthday dinner. We met for coffee at a neutral location where I finally shared the full extent of my financial support for Ryan over the years. I suspected it was bad, but not this bad, she said, eyes widening at the numbers. Why didn't you ever say anything? Family loyalty? Embarrassment? I'm not sure myself, I admitted. It just became normal somehow. Over the next few weeks, I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during years of financial constraints. Dinners out, weekend trips to local wineries, a theater subscription I'd previously canceled to cover Ryan's car insurance. Small pleasures returned to my life one by one. 3 weeks after our confrontation, Ryan's landlord called. Mr. Harper indicated you would be handling his outstanding balance, he began, sounding skeptical. When I explained the situation had changed, he sighed heavily. Eviction proceedings will continue then. Just thought you should know. My mother's response was immediate and blistering. How can you sleep at night knowing your brother will be homeless? She demanded during a call I almost sent to voicemail. This is cruel beyond words, Melissa. He won't be homeless, I replied, maintaining the calm tone Dr. Coleman and I had practiced. He has options. Get a job, find a less expensive apartment, ask one of his friends for help. I've sent him information about emergency rental assistance programs and employment agencies. He's your brother, she said, as if this single fact overrode all other considerations. Yes, and I love him, I agreed. But continuing to financially enable him isn't loving. It's hurting both of us. An unexpected ally emerged in the form of Uncle James, Dad's brother who I rarely saw since my parents' divorce. He called out of the blue, having heard about the situation through family grapevine. "Your father would be proud of you," he said, surprising me into momentary silence. He always worried Ryan was being spoiled by your mother's approach. Setting boundaries is the hardest and kindest thing you could do right now. By the 2-month mark, my budget had begun recovering. My first deposit back into savings was modest, but symbolically important. The credit card balance was shrinking rather than growing, and I'd started researching vacation options for later in the year, something I hadn't done in ages. News about Ryan came indirectly at first, then more directly as the situation evolved. He'd taken a job at a retail chain, his first steady employment in nearly a year. The position was entry-level and beneath his qualifications, according to Mom, but it provided regular income. Amber broke up with him when the lifestyle adjustments became apparent. Her Instagram now featured a new boyfriend with a luxury car and vacation photos from Cabo San Lucas. Ryan's social media went quiet around the same time. At a cousin's wedding I reluctantly attended, Mom maintained a cold distance, introducing me to distant relatives with the bare minimum of social courtesy. The extended family seemed confused by the obvious tension, some taking sides based on whatever version of events they'd heard. During the reception, I found myself seated with aunts and cousins who carefully avoided mentioning Ryan until several glasses of wine loosened inhibitions. When Aunt Patricia finally asked what happened, with that birthday dinner everyone's talking about, I gave a measured, factual account of the financial situation without emotional embellishment. "So you've been supporting him completely?" Cousin Elise asked, clearly surprised. "All this time." Ryan made it sound like you occasionally helped with small expenses, Uncle David added, frowning. "Not that you were covering everything." By dessert, several family members who'd been distant earlier approached with new understanding. "I would have done the same thing," Aunt Joanne whispered, squeezing my hand. "It's about time someone in this family stood up to the golden child dynamic." The first direct communication from Ryan came via text message 3 months after our confrontation, got promoted to shift lead. Starting financial literacy class at community college next month. Not asking for anything, just thought you should know. I stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. Congratulations on both. That's genuinely great news, Ryan. I'm proud of you. No financial offers, no reopening of closed doors, but a careful acknowledgement of positive steps. At the family Easter gathering, tension remained but had evolved into something less volatile. Ryan arrived in a used Honda rather than the Audi that had been repossessed. He lived with 2 roommates now in an apartment that cost half his previous rent. Mom still made excuses for his circumstances, but he himself seemed different, quieter, more thoughtful, occasionally making self-deprecating jokes about learning adulting the hard way. The most revealing moment came when someone asked about Christmas plans. In previous years, I'd automatically been assigned responsibility for the most expensive elements, the prime rib dinner, the higher-end gifts, the alcohol everyone consumed. This time, when Mom began, Melissa usually handles. Ryan interrupted. "Maybe we should all contribute what we can this year," he suggested, glancing my way briefly. "Split things more evenly." The silence that followed felt like a small victory, not reconciliation exactly, but acknowledgement of a changing dynamic that needed to change. 6 months after my 32nd birthday, my financial situation had transformed. The credit card debt was paid in full, my emergency fund replenished, and contributions to my retirement accounts back on schedule. Barbara, my financial advisor, noted with approval that I was back on track to meet long-term goals without detours. My apartment reflected the internal changes. I'd repainted the living room a calm sage green, replacing the beige that had been there since purchase. New bookshelves displayed the collection I'd accumulated but never properly showcased. Small upgrades, A quality coffee maker, art from local galleries, plants that thrived under my newly consistent care transformed the space from merely functional to genuinely personal. Ryan's life had undergone even more dramatic changes. His new apartment, shared with a coworker and the coworker's cousin, was half the size of his previous luxury unit. Located in a working-class neighborhood far from downtown, it lacked the amenities he'd considered essential before. Yet when I finally visited, after multiple invitations, I noticed something unexpected. It was clean, organized, and contained furnishings he'd actually purchased himself, including a second-hand dining table he'd refinished. His retail job had indeed led to promotion, shift supervisor with responsibility for inventory management and new hire training. Not my dream career, he admitted over coffee at a cafe midway between our apartments. But it pays the bills and I'm good at it. Regional manager says there's potential for advancement if I stick with it. That coffee meeting represented our first one-on-one conversation since the birthday confrontation. Arranged cautiously through text messages, we'd agreed to meet on neutral ground without Mom's mediating or inflammatory presence. I owe you an apology, Ryan said after initial awkward small talk. A big one. He traced the rim of his mug with one finger, clearly rehearsing words that didn't come easily. I took advantage of your generosity for years. Worse, I took it for granted, like it was something I was entitled to. The admission hung between us, more meaningful for being unprompted. What changed? I asked, genuinely curious about his evolution. Reality, he laughed without humor. Nothing teaches priorities like having your electricity shut off in January. Or eating ramen for 2 weeks straight because you spent grocery money on concert tickets. He shook his head. The financial literacy class helped too. Did you know credit cards charge 24% interest? I had no idea. I might have mentioned that once or twice, I said, allowing a small smile. Yeah, well, I wasn't listening before. His expression grew serious again. The hardest part wasn't even the money stuff. It was realizing how I'd behaved, who I'd become. Not someone I'm proud of. Mom had struggled more with the new family dynamic. She still made occasional attempts to restore the old patterns, suggesting I help out Ryan with larger purchases or cover family gifts since you can afford it. Each time, I maintained the boundaries Dr. Coleman had helped me establish, kind but firm refusals without lengthy justifications or apologies. She'll adjust eventually, Uncle James assured me during a lunch we'd made regular after his unexpected support. Your mother invested too heavily in the story of Ryan as the special one needing protection. Changing that narrative takes time. Thanksgiving marked the first major holiday under the new family arrangement. Instead of my handling everything as usual, we created a potluck system where everyone contributed according to their means. Ryan brought rolls and wine, modest but proportionate to his budget. Mom supplied the turkey but accepted others' contributions for sides and desserts. The tension never fully disappeared, but beneath it ran a current of healthier interaction. Ryan surprised everyone by bringing a thoughtful gift, photo frames containing childhood pictures he'd found and duplicated, one for each family member. The cost was minimal, but the effort substantial, exactly the opposite of his previous approach to gifts. My therapy sessions with Dr. Coleman had evolved from crisis management to deeper work on family patterns. The dynamic you described is classic, she explained during one particularly insightful session. You were cast as the capable one, the responsible one, which seems like a compliment until you realize it means you're never allowed vulnerability or support. Meanwhile, Ryan was cast as perpetually needy, which seems like getting the better deal until you realize it infantilizes him and prevents growth. Her insights helped me understand that my enabling wasn't just financial, it was emotional too. By constantly solving Ryan's problems, I'd participated in keeping him dependent, even as I resented that dependence. Helping isn't always helping became our session mantra, a reminder that true support sometimes meant stepping back. The most surprising outcome was my newfound comfort saying no without guilt or extensive explanation. From declining optional work projects that didn't advance my goals to refusing social obligations that drained rather than energized me, establishing boundaries with Ryan had created a template for healthier limits in all areas of life. Dating, which I'd put on indefinite hold during years of financial strain, re-entered my life unexpectedly. Michael, a client's brother introduced at a charity event, asked me to dinner after we discovered shared interests in hiking and obscure documentaries. Our third date included a frank discussion of my recent family drama, a conversation that would have mortified me months earlier, but now felt like an important test of compatibility. Boundaries aren't just good, they're necessary, he said, impressing me with his immediate understanding. My sister went through something similar with our cousin. The most loving thing she did was stop solving his problems. The most profound realization came when observing Ryan's gradual transformation. His financial hardship, while painful, had catalyzed growth that my protection had previously prevented. He developed budgeting skills, work ethic, and resilience that no amount of advice from me could have instilled. The brother emerging from this difficult period was more grounded, more capable, and paradoxically, closer to the person I'd always hoped he could become. I'm thinking about community college classes, he mentioned during our most recent lunch. Business management. The company has tuition assistance if I maintain full-time status. The pride in his voice when discussing his own achievements was entirely different from his previous bravado. As my next birthday approached, Ryan called with an unexpected proposal. I want to take you to dinner, he said. Nothing fancy like last year, just Brady's Grill on Elmwood. Their burgers are great, and he hesitated before adding, it's within my budget. The gesture brought tears to my eyes, not because of the modest restaurant choice, but because it represented a fundamental shift in our relationship. For the first time, he was giving what he could actually afford rather than promises he couldn't keep. The journey from resentment to healthy boundaries hadn't been linear or easy. There were still difficult family gatherings, uncomfortable conversations, and occasional relapses into old patterns. Mom still sometimes referred to me as selfish when I maintained financial boundaries. But beneath the challenges ran a current of authenticity that had been missing for years, relationships based on genuine connection rather than financial dependency. The deepest lesson wasn't about money at all, but about the courage to redefine family on healthier terms. Love didn't mean endless sacrifice or financial rescue. Sometimes it meant standing firm while someone you cared about faced necessary struggles. Sometimes the most generous gift was refusing to give what ultimately harmed both the giver and receiver. As I looked toward my 33rd birthday, I realized that what seemed like an ending, that painful confrontation over melting candles, was actually a beginning. For Ryan, for me, and for our family's future. The relationship we're slowly rebuilding might be different from before, but it's built on something more sustainable than one-sided sacrifice. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? How did you find the courage to finally stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop solving their problems and let them grow through their own challenges. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in your own journey toward healthier relationships.